bar over there and asking, if people drink on the show. And I said, no, I haven't had a drink in over 3 years now. I did the psychedelics thing. And you had brought up that there seems to be like a movement of the younger generation, just booze doesn't have a place. And I think that's a good thing, but you brought up a good point.
Yeah. So I feel like the contrary take here is that alcohol's kind of gone out of vogue in society. I think especially with young people, and it's kind of like at the same time that we see like a precipitous drop in socializing, romance, all this stuff for the younger generation, right? And like, I actually think I was making this point earlier. I think alcohol is a very important part of human society. I think it's a very important social lubricant. And like, yeah, my contrarian view on it is alcohol is actually really important.
That's an interesting concept. You're the only one that I've ever heard say that. But I don't know. I'm in my 40s now, so I don't know how young people are socializing. Unless I go to downtown Nashville on Broadway, then
you see it.
There's no shortage of alcohol there. But I wonder, how are people socializing that don't drink nowadays?
On the internet?
That's what
are they not socializing? I don't know. I think this is like a broader thing, right? Is like the era that we grew up in, went to college, went to high school, all this stuff. There weren't phones around, right? You'd get bored. You'd have to like sit and think about shit to entertain yourself, right? That whole thing, like long form thinking, like being bored. And alcohol was like the universal social lubricant when I was in my early 20s, right?
Yeah, me too. I think it started at like 13. But yeah, that's all.
But what happens if you get rid of it, right? Is like you have a lot of people that probably just socialize a lot less.
It's got to be replaced with something. Unfortunately, you're probably right. It's probably replaced with
I think it's
Instagram and X and
I think it's social media.
Damn.
Yeah, I don't think that's great. I don't think the human brain is wired like that, right? We are social animals. Like we're animals, right? We're creatures that take on the human form, but we're an incredibly social species, and it's weird if that sort of gets replaced or like augmented in a way that doesn't line up with how our brains work with the internet.
People say the same thing about cigarettes too.
Wait, do they?
Yeah, absolutely. I used to smoke. You never smoked?
I've smoked.
Yeah. You step outside of the bar and you talk to the other people that are smoking. Now I feel like I'm condoning cigarettes and alcohol, which is absurd for this show. But.
Living in New York in my early 20s, right? If you go outside and have a cigarette with somebody, like there's
a connection.
Yeah, you make friends, right?
Yeah. Or at work or anywhere.
Yeah. Although I think nicotine, cigarettes, I think are bad for you. Like, I think it makes it hard to breathe. It's like probably going to give you cancer someday.
Well, I think, on the flip side with the alcohol, all the broken homes, drinking with excess.
Yeah.
It's, and I think it's ended a lot of relationships as well. I know in my prior relationships, you get to tug on the bottle a little bit too much and everything goes off the rails. But that's me.
I had the benefit of being Indian. My body just can't really handle alcohol. Yeah.
Oh shit.
One of the nice things. I could never. In college, I would like to have thought that I could drink, but I don't think I could really hold my alcohol that well. We're also talking about studying math and physics at Stanford, which let me tell you about that party culture.
Tell me about it.
There's a lot of really late nights of doing problem sets. Like all-nighter after all-nighter of doing problem sets.
Not your typical college experience, huh?
They're like living in the physics building at Stanford, right? Or spending all night in the math library at Stanford. And just like these dimly lit rooms where you're like smelling the musk of an old textbook. That was my college experience.
Nice. Well, we got a lot to talk about today.
We do, man.
A ton to talk about. So let me start you off with an introduction here. Baiju Bhatt Son of immigrants who grew up in Virginia with a passion for science sparked by her father's work at NASA's Langley Research Center. A Stanford educated physicist and mathematician who co founded Robinhood alongside your college roommate Vlad Tenev. This no-fee trading app revolutionized the brokerage industry and shook up Wall Street, earning you an Apple Design Award in 2015 for its user-friendly design, navigated Robinhood through turbulent waters, including the GameStop trading halt and SEC settlements. Recently, you founded Aetherflux, a bold new venture aiming to harness solar energy from space and beam it to Earth. I love that. I just like I was telling you before, we just had this guy, Steve Quast, on, and he was talking about beaming energy to the earth.
Yeah.
And it was so far out there. I'm like, is this shit actually like real? And now here you are, you're legitimately doing it.
Yeah.
So, husband, father of 3 boys, and you appreciate craftsmanship, hardware, product design. You're passionate about watches and cars. What are your favorite cars?
Oh man. So I got a car kind of recently, which I love. Love this thing. It's a 1992. I like my cars old. First of all, I like my cars old and stinky.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I got this 1992 Porsche 911 RS in mint green.
Nice.
Hunting for this car for years. I finally found it.
Where'd you find it?
I think it was in Germany. Yeah.
Damn, that's awesome.
Yeah, this thing is cool. So I got to talk a little bit about building shit with our hands. So during COVID, this was kind of a wild time for me, at least. And I think for everybody it was wild, but we're all like stuck at home. And here I am like trying to lead Robinhood. So at the time, Vlad and I were co-CEOs of the company, trying to lead this enterprise from like my home office. Right? And you're just like in this little vortex of your own world the whole time. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I need a creative outlet. I've always been this way where there's the main thing that I care about. That's kind of like the main thing that my energy is going towards. And there's always like a creative muse or a creative outlet or something that's completely unrelated to the work that I'm doing, which is like a passion or a hobby. And I find that that's usually where a lot of the creativity is all about connecting unrelated ideas together, right? And seeing the threads that connect things that maybe you don't necessarily see if you just look at things very plainly. For me during COVID, I was like, man, I've been building technology, digital technology for years and years, coming on 10 years at that point. And I kind of wanted to try my hand at building stuff, like actual stuff. So I'm like, I know how to build technology, but I don't really feel like I know how to build mechanical material things. So I was like, all right, I also love cars because I grew up in Virginia and I had to drive all fucking time because I was taking classes at like a community college where I was like doing some research at this particle accelerator, which meant I had to just drive around all the time. So I loved cars. And I was like, if I want to get into classic cars someday, and I convinced myself that the way that I was going to do it was start out by building a car first.
No kidding?
Yeah.
What'd you build?
So are you familiar with this company called Factory 5?
No.
All right. Very cool company. They build kit cars that are like basically like reimaginations of like Shelby race cars. So they've got the Shelby Cobra that they make. And then the one that I did is the hardtop version of it. So the Shelby Daytona. So during COVID, I had never done this before. I ordered one of these kits, got connected to a couple of people that sort of were like my automotive mentors in the early days and kind of taught me how to do it. But during COVID, in my nights and weekends and whatever spare time I had, I go from a box of parts to like a thing that turned
awesome.
on. Yeah.
Did you find that difficult? Or did it come naturally to you?
I like difficult things. Mm-hmm. So I did find it to be difficult for sure. But that's kind of like, that's the rite of passage in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember I found myself a couple of times, because there's also COVID, right? And so
there's not much to do.
There's not much to do. There's also not a lot of people that can help you do shit. So I remember finding myself a couple of times, like, it's like, all right, it's Saturday. What am I doing today? I'm going to figure out how to mount this damn fuel tank onto this car. And I remember finding myself sort of on one of those little sliders underneath the car and like trying to prop the thing up on my legs and trying to screw it in. You become like a contortionist trying to build this stuff.
When was that?
This was during COVID.
How many class of cars do you have now?
Had a couple classes. Yeah.
Awesome.
My thing is I love the way that things work, and I think that experience was super interesting because you kind of go from like loving cars to being able to really be like, okay, the thing that I really like about cars is like the way that mechanical things working in a particular way. For example, right? Like I think cars sound really good. Love the sound of cars. But it's like, well, what does that mean? Like what part of the sound do you like, right? Do you like the exhaust note? Do you like the induction sound from the engine? Do you like the gears chattering? Because there's like, no sound deadening in the thing. Yeah, it's like getting a really deep understanding of all the components and being like, actually, then this is kind of one of the places that I've landed now. It's better to drive a slow car fast than to drive a fast car slow. So I actually kind of like my cars more underpowered, lightweight. So you gotta like really wring them out to actually keep up with traffic, for example.
Nice. I just got my first, I don't know if I'd call it a classic car, but
Yeah, are you in a car? Tell me. There's an engine sitting over there.
yeah, well, I'd love to talk about that on the air, but I can't. But for
There's an engine
obvious
sitting there.
reasons. But now I just got a 1977 Ford F-150.
Oh,
We were talking before. I grew up in Missouri. You were born there,
that was, yeah.
and that was like, they just don't make cars like they used to, man.
No.
I mean, even it's in. Yeah, I literally just picked it up last week. I love the damn thing. I'm putting some pipes on it because I like the exhaust sound.
What kind of engine does it have?
A 351.
Nice. Yeah. I love old cars. Yeah, cars today are all right, I'm going to go on a bit of a limb here. They're like kind of perverted in my opinion. Cuz I think of cars as these objects of industrial design, right? I think of them as these things that humanity invented for transportation, and there's like this artistic component to them because old cars were handmade, right? Mm-hmm. They were envisioned by the mind and built with the hand. And you look at the cars that exist today, number one, they're designed by computers, and they look like it, in my opinion. And they're built by robots. And just like the materials and the way that things fit together, there's something about it really, really don't like.
What do you think about?
That's why I say it's perverted.
I'm just curious. You know what I don't like is everything's going electric. Like, didn't Ferrari get rid of all of the? They're not doing engines anymore, right? It's all electric. I think so. And what? The Mercedes G-Wagon, those are getting ready to go all electric. And those things, I love the sound of those things.
Me too.
I used to drive them for work.
Big burbly V8.
Yeah, love it. But everything's going electric, and I think the sound of like these supercars are amazing. I can't envision a Ferrari flying by me with
no sound.
Yeah. It's weird.
Hugely.
I feel like it takes from the experience.
Oh man, yeah, that's not good.
But
I find the not just the electrification, because that you can like very quickly point a finger to that and be like, I don't like the way that works. But I think just in general how computerized cars are.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it really takes away from the experience, because when I'm sitting behind the wheel of a car, like I want to be able to know what's going on with the road surface through the way the steering wheel's moving in your hand, right? You want to be able to feel how much traction the car's got based on how much you can kind of like feel it moving through your butt.
Dude, you drive, don't you?
I do, yeah.
Do you go to the track?
Not that much.
Have you taken driving schools?
I have, yeah.
Which ones?
I've had some people tutor me on it before.
Dude, you have...
No, actually, I've taken the Ferrari driving school once.
How was it?
It was really fast. It was like too fast.
Dude, this is
Have
out.
you done it before?
Well, I've done a bunch of driving schools for back in the old days when I was a SEAL and contracting for CIA. They put us through a ton of schools.
Did they put you through the Ferrari school?
No. It was it was a lot more practical. It was like pitting and crashing into things and how to get out of situations. But I took this course. You've got to do this. Like you were talking about lighter cars, drive them faster. So there's this course in New Hampshire. It's called the O'Neill Rally Racing Course. Have you heard of it?
I love rally racing.
Dude, it is fucking awesome. I went there, and I think I went there for like 2 weeks. This is a long time ago, but you're out in the middle of nowhere in New Hampshire, and day one, I think, is the first phase is front wheel drive, then you do rear wheel drive, then you do all wheel drive, then you do off roading, and you start off on little Ford Festivas and move to Audis and BMWs for rear wheel drive, and you're just on these little trails in the mountains out there. The trails are like,
well, you took BMWs on dirt roads?
dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. You've gotta check this out.
Oh,
It's
this
like the
sounds
coolest
good.
fucking driving school I've ever taken. And yeah, like I said, I think it's about 2 weeks long. They got all kinds of different packages, but when my son gets older, that's one of the first things I want to do with him when he can see over the steering wheel, get him out there on those trails, and it's awesome. You'll love it. I hope you do it.
Yeah, I actually, as you're saying this, I'm thinking about wanting to do that with my boys. They would love that.
Yeah, O'Neill Rally Racing School. That's not a plug. It's just
It's just awesome.
fucking awesome.
Yeah. Also, off-roading is really fun.
Yeah, I mean it's
Really fun.
You do it all, and then you go there in the winter and do it in the snow. It's awesome. The instructors are phenomenal. I can't wait to do it again. But
Yeah, I would actually love to do that. So I've done one actual driving school, which is like the Ferrari one. Kind of at the opposite end of the spectrum. Too fast. Like it makes you feel like you're gonna throw up the whole time.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, I've not done
Off-roading
any of
is
those.
way more fun. Yeah.
It's a lot of fun, man. And you're moving through like these trails that are barely wide enough for the car to get through, taking right angle turns at like 50 miles. It's awesome. It is awesome.
Were there any like big old trucks on this one?
No, I think we used Jeep Cherokees for the off-roading. But like I said, this is like 10, 15 years ago that I did that course. I haven't taken a driving course since, but it was the most fun driving course I've taken, and I've taken a ton of them.
Yeah.
But, well, everybody starts off with a gift here.
Oh, amazing.
Vigilance League gummy bears, legal in all 50 states.
Can I have some?
Yeah, man. Dig in. Just candy. It's no funny business.
Good stuff. I love gummy bears.
Me too. But well, I'd love to do a life story on you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So let's just start at the beginning and go in chronological order. But where'd you grow up?
So, grew up in Alabama and then in Southern Virginia. And I guess I was grown up by the time I got to college. So my family moves to the U.S. from India. My dad had grown up always wanting to study physics. So it's like his life goal. He wanted to study physics. And they're from a little town. I guess now it's a big town in India called Bhavnagar in Gujarat. And my grandfather was one of the first Western trained eye doctors.
No kid.
This has got to be in like probably the 40s and 50s and 60s. He was one of the first Western trained eye doctors and was like, my children are going to go into optometry. So this is like my dad and his brothers. So my dad had always wanted to study physics, goes to college to study chemistry, I want to say. I think he started a PhD in chemistry in India. And then stops doing that and is an optometrist. He's like a contact lens doctor in India, applying to PhD programs in America because he wanted to study physics. And the story that my dad tells me is that he put the word Kumar at the end of his name, which apparently means you're a bachelor, because he was like, I'm going to devote my life to science. My dad is like he's a very studious man, and I love him. But lo and behold, my dad, I think, eventually was like, all right, I'm going to get married. I think he was, I think he was maybe like, all right, maybe this coming to America to study physics thing isn't going to happen. So he gets married to my mom, and then she's pregnant with me, and then he gets into University of Huntsville, Alabama to study physics. And my mom originally, I think, was not going to come. 'Cause she was the youngest of a bunch of siblings. She really loved her family in India. And the story that they told me is that they go to the embassy in India, and my mom is pregnant with me, and they're like, "Oh, your son, you're pregnant, right?" And they're like, "Your son's going to be born in America." So my mom, much to her frustration, sorry, this is going back a little bit further, but I think it's
No, this is cool.
pretty relevant. She comes to America, and we grow up. So when she first lands in America, she's in Huntsville, Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah, that's where my dad was studying physics. And I think they knew like one Indian family in America that were also doctors that were in Warrensburg, Missouri.
Right around where I grew up.
Yeah. And so my mom, the story goes, she goes out to Warrensburg right when she's about to give birth to me, because you can't afford to go to the hospital for like a week, right? So she goes there, I'm born, and then she comes back to Alabama, which is where I grew up. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
It was
You still tight with both your parents?
yeah, very much so.
Did you say your dad in the 40s or in his 40s?
No, when my grandfather studied,
Oh, okay.
which must have been in the 40s or 50s in India.
Okay. I was
Maybe
like,
it was 50s or 60s. No, he was born in the 40s.
okay.
He wasn't in his 40s in the 40s.
Right on. Well, what were you into? What were you into growing up?
Yeah, so my childhood was, I had a really loving family, but the circumstances were, I think, objectively pretty tough a lot of times. So this is like one of the pretty heavy duty things that happened in my life at a pretty young age. My dad's kidneys failed. Pretty much. I think it probably started around the time he came to the US. And so by the time I was 4 or 5, my dad had to stop out of his PhD program to get a job to pay for the medical bills. So here we are moving to a little town called Poquoson, Virginia, next to Langley Air Force Base, because my dad got a job at NASA Langley. And I think one of the big things for him was, he's like, I have to get a job to pay for these medical bills, because he started going on dialysis when I was like 5 years old. So there I was, only child, like not a lot of brown people around Southern Virginia. Yeah, and actually, interestingly, I didn't learn English until I was like maybe 4 or 5.
No kidding.
Yeah, I learned Gujarati was my first language. Because my mom didn't speak English. We learned English together. I learned English watching TV.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was kind of who I was as a kid when we got to Virginia. So what was I into as a kid? I was really into superheroes. I was really into like cartoons and X-Men and comic books and stuff like that. I was also really into science and space, and that a lot of that came from my dad, because he worked at NASA.
That's cool.
It's like, what does your dad do? He's a scientist at NASA, or something that I was always really proud of and I thought was very cool. And I remember I would go to visit my dad at work sometimes. And have you been to Langley Air Force Base?
No.
Yeah, there's these huge wind tunnels, right, that are kind of on the facility. And I remember going there as a kid and just being sort of awestruck by the machinery of like science and space, right? And like how big it was. And I remember my dad had he had like a desktop computer, and he was doing computer stuff on, I think he was using Linux in like the 90s. So I distinctly remember going in, like my dad had his computer at his desk. So that was a lot of my childhood. I mean, I grew up not being a terribly athletic kid. I was actually quite overweight as a child,
You were overweight?
big time.
No kidding.
Yeah. I ended up losing a ton of weight when I got a little bit older. Like I lost like nearly a third of my body weight in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, from exercising.
Okay.
And so that was kind of my childhood, right? We were not terribly well to do. We lived in like a small apartment. My dad was a scientist at NASA. He was on dialysis. I was a little kid, I was like a little boy. And the point at which my life fundamentally changed was when I was in 8th grade, actually. And my dad had been on dialysis this whole time and was waiting to get a kidney transplant, like waiting year in, year out. I remember he had this little beeper that he would carry around with him. Just like, oh, did the beeper go off? Because if the beeper went off, it meant that one of the hospitals called because they had a kidney transplant for him. And you got to like pack up and go. And when I was in 8th grade, my dad's kidney disease kind of took a turn for the worse. So he was on dialysis and he got this infection. And I don't think they really understood what was happening at the time, but he got very, very sick from the catheter that was in his stomach, basically, for him to be able to do dialysis. And my dad goes from being sick to being very sick to being hospitalized to my mom being like every day waking up in the morning and going and staying with my dad at the hospital all day. And I was just kind of like home alone, just fucking confused,
Damn.
being like, what do I do? Right? Like, where does life go from here? Feels completely rudderless. Didn't have any siblings, right? I was not cool at all. I was like fat brown kid in school. Like there wasn't a lot of, I had a couple of friends. Actually one good friend from that period that's still a friend of mine. But I just remember feeling so unbelievably lost. And then my dad's health continues to take a turn for the worse. And he has a couple of really major surgeries where, at 13 or whatever it was, I remember staring down the specter of what happens if my dad passes away. By the way, my dad is healthy and alive today, so
Good.
probably worth saying that. I'm like, what happens, right? I want to go back to India. I've never lived there. My parents couldn't even afford to go back to India. The last time I went back to India was in 1997. 97, maybe 98.
Did you go back? Is that like the only time you went back to India, or did you go back and forth a couple times?
Probably when I was a little kid, I went like 2 or 3 times.
But you don't remember it?
Vague memories of it. But I'm an American, right? Like, through and through. So that's happening, and I'm like, well, what do I do, right? I don't feel like I can control anything in my life. But growing up in my household, it was like this theme will come back a little bit later on, right? Is like, you have to make the most of the opportunities in life. And America is the land of opportunity. And my dad did beat one thing into my head, which is education, education, education. Like, that's your way out. So I go from not being a terribly good student to being like, I'm going to get really good at math. I'm going to get really good at physics, because no matter what, like that'll give me some purpose in life. And if I'm doing really well in school, that'll be kind of like the thing that pulls me forward. Lo and behold, a few months later, my dad, his kidney disease that he had that had him hospitalized, which I'm talking about it kind of vaguely because I don't think they really know what happened other than the fact that he had a really bad infection. He starts to get better and they're like, give this man a kidney transplant. Like, he's been on death's door. And so he gets a kidney transplant. By the time that happens, which is I think the summer between 8th and 9th grade for me, I was like a full-on man at that point. because I'm like, I have to do well in school. Like that's my mission in life. And if I do really well in school, that's going to be how I like carve my own path out, because I didn't want to feel rudderless anymore. I wanted some degree of agency, some control over my life. And so I go from being not a very good student to being just locked in.
Wow.
And just at that point, like figured out that I loved physics, I loved math. I'd kind of been given this gift of being introduced to this as a kid by my dad, right? And this, one of the interesting things growing up, right, is like doing well in school or studying math and stuff like this. This was not cool when we were kids, right? Like you're kind of a loser if you did stuff like this, which I think is not a good thing. No. Like I don't think that's a weird and bad thing for society to reinforce. Like we want our young people to cherish education, because otherwise they're not going to know what the fuck they're talking about, right? Like that's what that era of life is about learning stuff so that you have a better lens to look at like this weird thing called adulthood in life through. So
what was your dad studying at NASA? What was he working on?
He was doing atmospheric sciences.
What is that?
I think he was doing like satellite imaging.
No kidding.
Is that fucking wild?
Yeah.
You can't make this stuff up. It goes around full circle.
I mean, do you guys talk a lot about what you're doing now?
We do, yeah. He's my dad's a little bit older now, and he really wants to be involved. But honestly, at this stage, it's nice just to have something cool to talk to my dad about with. Yeah, so they come over and hang out with the kids pretty often.
They live next to you or close to you? Or?
They live pretty close by, yeah.
That's cool, man. That's cool. I wish my parents lived closer.
Where do your parents live?
They're in Florida.
That's right.
Yeah, they're in Florida. I moved to Florida, and then the whole family moved to Florida, and then
Really?
I left Florida. So, yeah, wanted to, like I told you downstairs, I wanted to raise my kids in a different environment than South Florida. It's just a little too wild down there.
Yeah, at which point I made the argument that the best place to raise kids is Silicon Valley, which I don't actually think that's true.
With my busy schedule, I really need to take care of my wellness by getting a good night's sleep. For years now, I've had my Helix mattress that they've sent me to try, and it's really helped me sleep through the night and feel energized the next morning. I sleep without interruption and without any back pain, and I truly wake up feeling refreshed, and I'm always ready for whatever the day brings. Helix is made to fit your body type and sleep position, and Helix has been recommended by multiple leading professionals as a go-to solution for getting help improving sleep, especially if you have snoring issues, have sleep apnea, have trouble sleeping through the night, or if you're sleeping too hot. They can even recommend which mattress will work best for you. Now's the best time to try Helix, and they're giving my listeners an exclusive offer. Go to helixsleep.com/SRS for 27% off site-wide. That's helixsleep.com for 27% off site-wide. helixsleep.com/SRS. Summer's here, and if you're anything like me, you didn't spend the winter just sitting around. You stayed sharp and kept moving. And now it's time your gear caught up. And that's why I want to introduce you to Roka. I've been looking for eyewear that can handle any situation with performance and style. And let me tell you, these aren't your average shades. I've tested them in the real world from shooting to fishing to off-roading, and they hold up. They're lightweight, don't slide around on my face, and can take a hit without falling apart. And the best part, they look good. They're clean and modern, no frills here, just premium eyewear that performs without compromise. That's something that I respect, and that's also why every time I head out the door, I reach for my Roka shades. Roka's based in Austin, Texas, American designed, no cut corners. The optics are crystal clear, cut through glare, and the fit stays comfortable all day long. Need a prescription? They've got you covered with both sunglasses and eyeglasses. Not only does Roka have awesome shades, they also have these that protect you against blue light. I wear these every night when I'm winding down for the day, and I still got to look at my phone or my laptop or my iPad. It just helps you wind down and get ready for bed. They are a one-stop shop for eyewear that's built to handle whatever life throws at you. Roka is the real deal. Ready to upgrade your eyewear? Check them out for yourself at roka.com and use code SRS for 20% off site-wide at checkout. That's ROKA.com. So where do we go from school?
Yeah, so second half of college or second half of high school was very fun. Felt like my brain woke up and I could just learn stuff. And I loved physics and I loved math. So I went whole hog. Like that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try to get into Stanford or MIT or Caltech or Harvard or one of these like really good schools. And so I just like buried my nose in the textbook and I started actually working for, I want to say like a year or two and the nights and weekends and during the summers at this place called Jefferson Lab, which is a particle accelerator in Southern Virginia. So I was deep into physics.
A particle accelerator. What is that?
That's where you take high energy particles and you collide them to study the quantum mechanical effects.
This is like CERN.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with CERN?
I am.
What are they
familiar with
doing
CERN.
there?
They're studying quantum field theory, right? So quantum field theory is a fascinating subject, by the way. Should we talk about this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So do you know about quantum mechanics?
No.
All right. So Einstein, with his big old brain, figured a lot of this stuff out and actually didn't believe in a lot of it when he was alive, which is weird. Famously said, God doesn't play dice or roll dice. And quantum mechanics is this theory of the universe, which is fundamentally probabilistic, right? It's about probabilities. Mm-hmm. So the general idea of quantum mechanics is that you have, let's see if I can do a decent job of explaining this, is that things in nature have this particle behavior sometimes. Sometimes they have this wave behavior. And quantum states are when, I think it's actually easier to talk about quantum mechanics a little bit more specifically, like in the context of electromagnetism.
Okay.
And light. So that's kind of what I'm trying to get to, is there's this idea of, and this actually relates to the name of the company, Aetherflux, by the way. There's this idea of whether light is a wave or it's a particle. And different people through history have had different opinions on whether it's one or the other. And there's this idea, well, if light is a wave, then waves have some medium through which they propagate, right? And we knew that light has a lot of wave-like characteristics. It's got wavelength, and in turn, it's got a frequency. And you can kind of think about light in that way. One of the things that Einstein figured out, and a lot of the people that worked on quantum mechanics at the turn of the last century, was that it also has this particle behavior. And if you want to understand like how these two incongruent descriptions can fit together, quantum mechanics is kind of the machinery behind it. But quantum field theory is taking the machinery of quantum mechanics and trying to like explain more physical phenomenon with it. So let's see if I can do a paraphrasing of this or a good explanation of this. So quantum field theory basically says that there's different kinds of, for each of the fundamental forces that exist in the universe, right? There's different particles that carry the sort of interaction between things that are happening, and then there's the particles that actually carry the quantities, right? So if you have, in the context of electromagnetic interaction, you have charged particles like electrons and protons, and then you have ways in which charged particles sort of communicate with each other, which is with light, right? Mm-hmm. So quantum field theory is kind of like the generalization of that framework to how quarks and neutrinos work, to how other kinds of fundamental particles that are predicted might exist or not exist. So one of them more recently is this thing called the Higgs boson. Have you ever heard of this before?
No.
See if I can explain this without going into too much of a rabbit hole. But it's this thing in quantum field theory. It's a particle that was predicted to exist a long time ago when quantum field theory was first invented, as the particle that would give things mass. And there was a field that if different particles interacted with it, would give particles the phenomenon of mass. And there was this fundamental, I'm kind of trying to give a short version of this. There was a prediction that there would be this particle called the Higgs boson, which was central to this thing, but it was really, really difficult to observe. One of the stories that I've heard, it's been called the God particle over time, because I think originally it was called the goddamn particle because it was so goddamn hard to observe. But at some point, I think they felt that was not that didn't speak to the sensibilities of scientific publications in, I don't know, like the 50s or something like that. So they just called it the God particle. But creating these experiments that create collisions, that create these esoteric states of matter where you might be able to observe a Higgs boson, this is the kind of stuff that CERN does.
Okay.
So they're probing this theory called quantum field theory to see all the weird predictions and see if you can create those in the real world. This is a very broad explanation.
I mean, there's a lot of theories out there that they're trying to create mini black holes and all this other stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty catchy. I don't know if that's gonna happen.
Not buying it, huh?
I'm not buying that. I mean, I think if something like that were to happen, it would probably evaporate in a very short amount of time.
I mean, does this have to do? I watch this stuff. I don't understand half of it, so I'm going to butcher this because I watched this a couple years ago. But I remember watching this thing on YouTube, and it was talking about Max Planck. And I think what they were talking about, there was a couple different things, but they were talking about how different particles will act differently if they're being observed. There's consciousness around it.
Yeah.
And even when they set a camera up, if somebody's watching the camera, then the particles will still act differently than if they're not being physically observed. Do you know about this?
I do, yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, it's this thing called the uncertainty principle. And this is something that comes from quantum mechanics. And let's see if I can remember this correctly. But there's basically the amount of precision that you can theoretically have when observing a system, right? So if I remember this correctly, it's that there's a few different statements of this uncertainty principle. And to any of the listeners out there that are actual physicists, if I get something wrong here, I'm sorry. But there's this basic idea that if you think about the measurement uncertainty of a physical system, the time uncertainty and the energy uncertainty, and you multiply those two together, that uncertainty is you're not going to be able to be more certain about those two things than a fixed amount. So if you get more precise with the exact time something is happening, then the exact energy becomes more variable, and vice versa. And so I kind of think about it as this lower bound for how accurately you can actually see or observe anything in the physical world. Because if you get more precise on the time measurement, the energy becomes uncertain. If you get more precise on the energy measurement, the exact time becomes uncertain. And there's other formulations of this uncertainty principle, but it basically is like a lower bound on how precise the description of the universe can be.
I think I read somewhere, maybe somebody said it on the show recently, I can't remember, but back to light. I either read or somebody said it on the show that we just froze light.
Yeah, I've heard about that too. I don't really know what that means.
I don't know what that means either.
Yeah, I don't really know what that means.
So is light a particle or a wave? Because I saw some other things. It was talking about when you shoot a beam into like a slit.
It has both behaviors.
Yeah.
Yeah. Light is both a wave and a particle. This is the wild thing. It exists. It exhibits this thing called wave particle duality. And this is actually one of the things that Einstein figured out. So, related to this, but a little bit of a tangent, is the idea of like, what is the speed of light? Because this is one of the things that people were studying in the late 1800s to kind of try to understand what is the phenomenon of light. And the idea at the time, the prevailing theory is that light's a wave. And so if light is a wave, waves have mediums that they travel through, right? So if we're talking to each other, these are sound waves. They're traveling from little vibrations in my throat. They're vibrating the air and you're hearing them in your ear and vice versa, right? So the medium that the sound wave is traveling through is the air. Similarly, if you have the surface of water and you drop a stone in it, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to create a little wave that's going to travel on the surface of the water. So if light is a wave, what's the medium? Like what is the thing that light is oscillating that's behind this? So they famously called it the aether. So there's this medium that was postulated to exist called the aether that light would travel through that would give it this wave phenomenon. And there were a bunch of experiments done to sort of characterize the speed of light and in turn to characterize whatever this medium is that it's traveling through, which just led to a bunch of head scratching. So one of the famous scientific experiments during this time is called the Michelson-Morley experiment, where people tried to measure the speed of light. And again, this is kind of the paraphrasing of it, is if you have a light source and you pass it through basically and you split it in half and you have half of it go this direction, half of it go that direction. You have two mirrors that are the same distance and you bounce the light back, then presumably you would be able to see light traveling at a slightly faster speed in one direction or the other because the Earth is rotating, right? The Earth is moving, and in turn, the surface on which the light is being transported is moving. So if the Earth is rotating this way and you're firing the light that way, then you'd expect to see the speed of light to be a little faster in that direction versus in this direction, right? So they do this experiment, they find it to be the exact same. They're like, what the hell's going on here? So there's a bunch of sort of thinking that was done around the time to try to characterize whether there was something about our misunderstanding of the aether. Maybe it was like a really thick, viscous thing where it sort of smoothed out on the surface of the Earth, and that's the reason why light was behaving in this weird way through it. There are all these like ideas that people are coming up with. And then Einstein comes along and he's basically like, no, actually, it is the same in every direction because the speed of light is constant in every reference frame, whether it's moving or stationary. And the thing is, it's the speed of light that's the constant, and time and space like literally contract and expand to be able to keep that a constant. So this was kind of the beginning of...
What does that mean? Time and space can contract and expand.
Yeah, this is the theory of special relativity. This is like what put Einstein on the map. And if you go through and you actually just work out the equations for what happens, let's see if I can explain this in a simple real world example. So here's a real world example that you'll see. So if you have a clock on a satellite, because of this relativistic effect, because the satellite is moving really quickly, in the reference frame of the satellite, you'll actually see the clock ticking at a slightly different pace than you'll see it on the surface of the Earth. So you actually have to do some computation in the limit to be able to figure out that difference. See if I can do a better job of explaining how this actually works. It's a pretty esoteric one. But Now, let me see if I can think of a good example of how to explain length, time dilation, and length contraction. Or, yeah. Maybe we come back to this one. I'm not sure if I've got a great, simple
Okay.
explanation.
Let me ask you about quantum entanglement. It sounds like it's going to revolutionize communications, especially crypto. And so, it's my understanding that you take a particle, you split it in half, put one over here, you could put the other one in another room, in another country, infinite distance away. And if you put a vibration on this half, then the other half will mimic that exact same vibration no matter what the distance is. Am I correct?
Yep.
Can
How does
anybody
this work?
explain why that is happening?
This actually has to do with what we were talking about a couple of minutes ago around uncertainty, right? So what ends up happening is you have two particles that together are in a certain quantum state. And if, for example, if this one is up, and so it might be the case that if you have these two things, that together on average, like half of the time this one's up, half the time this one's down. And so on average, it's flat. Just make a simple analogy here, right? But you don't know at any point in time whether this one's up. So there's two particles in your system, and on average, one of them is up and one of them is down. It could be like this, it could be like this, or it could be like this as it's changing states between the two. But that together, these two things are entangled. And that always, on average, one is going to be up and one is going to be down. Now, this kind of comes back to that uncertainty thing that we were talking about, right? So if you can keep these things truly entangled with one of them and physically separate them, and you take this one and you look at it and you're like, oh, it's up, that's going to force the other one into the down state. Because these things are entangled, and on average, the quantum state together shares, like, it's flat, meaning if one of them is up, the other one's down. Mm-hmm. Then just by looking at one of them, you force the other one into the opposite state. So this is how you would be able to encode something at a long distance like this.
Man,
Does that make sense?
it does make sense. I can't, I mean, maybe nobody can, I don't know, but how are they communicating? How are they still entangled?
Yeah.
Is it everything is connected?
This is one of the true mysteries of the universe.
Does it mean there's multiverse?
I don't know about that, man. I don't know if there's enough evidence to suggest that there's a multiverse. I think it's a theoretical possibility, but there's a lot of theoretical possibilities out there.
Do you think about this stuff a lot?
I do actually. Yeah. I have a lot in the past. I'm not sure I think about it that much today. That's why I'm kind of like, let me see if I can explain this and try to like reach back about a decade in my physics knowledge and see if I can come up with an example that kind of makes sense. No, I do think about it a decent bit. I think there's this is the thing about quantum mechanics, and one of the things that I love about quantum mechanics is that it's very, very unintuitive. Right? When you think about physics and having been trained as a physicist, it's all about intuition for how the physical world works, right? And it's kind of like you study the equations enough, and then you form a sort of, literally an intuitive understanding of how it might work in different contexts. Because a lot of physics is like, you're trying to imagine how something could happen. You've got a problem on a piece of paper, and you're trying to paint a picture of it in your head. Quantum mechanics makes that really hard because it's fundamentally very, very unintuitive. So when you think about like what's a physical analog to how this might work in the real world, a lot of time with quantum mechanics, you're like kind of drawing a blank because you're like, things don't really work like that in the normal world. But you know that if you zoom in close enough, they have all these weird phenomenons to them. I think a related question is like, is there a higher power? Is there a higher being? I don't know. I fundamentally don't know. I'm curious. I've gone back and forth on it. The place I've landed is that I'm not sure that it's a question that we as humans can really answer.
That's it. Are your parents, dude? What do your parents believe?
My mom is religious. My dad is not. My dad is a very spiritual person, but he's not a religious person. And he told me that from a pretty early age. He's like, I'm not going to tell you to believe in God or not to believe in God. It's kind of up to you. So my dad kind of raised me in that way. It's like, the big questions, you can ask me what I think, but I'm not going to tell you what to think. It's kind of on you to figure out.
It's good.
You?
Do I believe there's a higher power?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Tell me about it.
100%. Well, I grew up Catholic, and but I didn't really take it serious. I never took it seriously, and but I was raised in that. Went to church every Sunday. Then I joined the SEAL teams, and just lost it. Like, didn't believe in anything. Couldn't explain why people were dying, and why out of a platoon of us. I mean, SEAL teams are a fucked up place for a young adult. I mean, there's a lot of, it's not a great environment. A lot of drinking, a lot of infidelity, a lot of fighting. And then, there's the whole war thing. And, I would see, if you had somebody that didn't cheat on their wife and that was sober, it was almost like some type of a phenomenon within the SEAL teams. And time again, I would see, there would be a bunch of us, and I loved all the guys that I was with, but like I said, 99% of us were, I wasn't married at the time, but it's cheating on your wife, it's getting in bar fights, it's a different life. And I would see the guys that get killed in action, and a lot of times it would be the guy that's not out with the platoon, drinking, bar fighting, womanizing. It would be the guy that's a really good dad, that is a really good husband, that somehow has figured out the balance between war and family life. And it was just time and time again, those were the guys that were getting killed, and it made me feel guilty, and it actually like took a lot of faith from me in God. And it was like, this makes no sense. Why would you fucking take the guy that
Yeah.
that has kids, that is there for his kids, who is a good dad and is a good role model and a good husband, and not just for his kids, but for society as a whole. And then you got a guy like me who considered myself a piece of shit, who's womanizing, you know what I mean? And it's like, it made me feel guilty. It didn't make any damn sense, kind of like quantum mechanics. And, and so, and then, and that was very early on in my career. And then I kept moving, and I just, I never really thought about it. And then, recently, it was after my psychedelics. I did psychedelics, and I did this thing called 5-MeO-DMT2 after I did the Ibogaine, which is it's a death experience. You legitimately, like, there's no question in your mind, you're dying. You're going to die. And so I think what it does is it's a pineal gland dump.
Like, what does that do to your perspective?
It changes everything, because when you do it, so basically, and I'll speed this up a little bit, but you smoke this and then you feel like you're dying, and it gets stronger and stronger. It kind of feels like an eternity, but it really only lasts maybe 15, 30 seconds, and maybe even less than that. But you start sorting through everything in your life, and it like light speed. And you start to separate from the materialistic world, and I mean, everything, and you don't have time to process what's going on, but you start to separate from, you might be thinking about a friend, and you make that separation. And for me, it was getting rid of materialistic stuff, friends, family, And then you go and it's all the things that you're holding on to that you
Yeah.
value in the world that we live in, right?
Yeah.
And then the last things for me was when I did this, I only had my son and my wife, and those were the last things that I was grasping onto, and it was like a fight. It was like, I cannot die, because if I die, I'm leaving my, less than 1 year old son at the time behind in this fucked up world, and my wife, who is a stay at home mom. And then you separate from that. And when you separate from the last thing, you cross over into like this other realm. And a lot of
You
people,
actually thought you were going to die when you did this.
yeah, there's zero question in your brain that you are departing life. It's over. And you don't know where you're going, and it's happening, and you cannot stop it. And so after you go through that, like I said, it feels like an eternity, but it's only a matter of seconds. And then when you make that final separation, then you cross over into this other realm. And it's also called the God molecule, and it's called the bliss drug or something like that. And you cross over, and you sounds kind of hippie-ish, but when I was growing up, the hippies, and they're all talking about everything's energy and all this other shit, and I'm like, okay, whatever. Well, you feel that when you cross over, and I did not. I wanted to do it. I just wanted to see Earth and nature when I did it, so I didn't put the blindfold on. And so when I made that separation, I crossed over. I opened my eyes and like sat up, and this is off just south of. It was in. I think it's actually in Rosarito, Mexico. So you're on the beach, and I opened my eyes, and I could just. I did not see anything that wasn't there. It wasn't like Grateful Dead, psychedelics, pink elephants and rainbows and all this shit. It was, everything that I saw was actually there, but it was like this intuition was injected into me, and I could feel the flow of energy, and so I could see it